Hey everybody, it's Jason McLaren with the Leadership Loading Podcast, and today we have our guest Tammy Laird. Laird. Yeah. Um, I'm just giving her a hard time. Before recording, we were chit-chatting about some stuff, and so Tammy is a trauma resiliency peer coach, helping end the statistic of veteran and first responder suicide with the amazing protocols over there at 220.org. We'll talk some about that here in a little bit. She's also an Air Force and Army veteran, children's author, and like I said earlier, 220 trauma resiliency peer coach, wife, homeschooling mother of three. And so it's obviously her passion to bring light to the darkness of the world, remove trauma and healing our heroes, which is why she's with us today. I met 220. I met the group through another group that I'm a part of. Of course, I can't remember the name now, but it's a video coffee group that I'm in. And we talk about stuff about veterans, first responders. So Tammy, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, so tell us a little bit about yourself, kind of how you got into 220 and a little bit about your background. And then we'll go into kind of, how you transition to your civilian world life and for the listener.
Well, you've already introduced the main points. So the concise version is I was on a Zoom with Angels 14, and we were just sharing community, camaraderie, connection. And then a dear friend brought 220 on, and we got connected there. And then the rest is pretty much history. I just fell in love with the passion and the joy of healing PTSD, anxiety, negative emotions, just giving people back their lives. I'm also big on sleep. Sleep is very important. As a children's author, one of my stories was on obstructive sleep apnea in children. So finding that veterans and first responders and their family members, they're not sleeping because of trauma. This was another thing. I was like, oh, we can get them to sleep again. So that's how that started. Did I answer all your questions?
Yeah, definitely. So let's start off with your military background. So you're Army and Air Force veteran. Which one was first?
Army was first. 17 years old. Made my parents cry. Not my dad, just my mom. And they co-signed, did delayed entry program, did Army Reserves for probably 5 years, contracted with Air Force ROTC, so simultaneously. That was funny. Today's Tuesday. It's Air Force Day. Now it's Thursday. It's Air Force Day. Oh, it's the weekend. It's Army Day. So once I contracted, then I only had to deal with the Air Force uniforms.
That's funny. Yeah, I did a similar deal. I tried to do I did delayed entry. Um, since I went to 5 different high schools in 4 years, I had lost some credits due to transfers. So I had to go an extra semester and do some summer school. So that kind of messed me up. But while my mom was out of state finishing her degree, I went and enlisted behind her back, and I became a diesel mechanic for the Air Force. And she came back and, of course, like you said, cried and was flipping out. And she went to the recruiter and was like, he's not going to basic training. And they said, well, he's 18, he can sign his own papers. And so we ended up negotiating and getting me in a general contract. So I didn't become a diesel mechanic. Nothing wrong with diesel mechanics, but I'm not very good with cars. And so I became a firefighter in the Air Force, which is kind of my whole backstory, which I'm not going to go into. But so yeah, that's kind of funny. So let's talk about the children's author part of your life. How many books do you have? How'd you get started with that? What's the process if anyone's interested in writing a book themselves?
So I have 2 books right now. Introducing Beatrice, about stuffed animals, and just seeing your value and never give up trying to be friends, never give up on anything. Stuffed animals have to figure out how to live in their new environment. I think a lot of that came from just watching my kids transition as they were growing up. Teenage son, child, and baby. My kids are 5 years apart, so it's by God's design, not our plan. Anyway, because of that, there was a lot of just transitioning going on within the family, and there might be some little bit of projection there from me as I was transitioning from the military to being a civilian and being out of that environment. That was, it's a difficult transition. Anytime you switch career paths and you're used to things a certain way, and then all of a sudden it's like night and day. So that's the first book. Second book, like I already mentioned, obstructive sleep apnea. It's the story of our middle son that went through all of that, every step along the way to get to where he is now. If you catch it early for children, you can change their entire world. So that kind of dovetails with PTS and PTSD. If you can heal it early, like someone has a critical incident, you heal it quick, they never develop PTS. So with obstructive sleep apnea, if you catch it early, you can help the child grow. They grow to their full potential, not stunted growth, because they're breathing and they're getting what they need during those REM cycles. So there's a lot of parallels to what I do as a 22-0 peer coach, to the children's story of just getting rid of sleep apnea. And then the third book is for our first responders, including our veterans. That is, I'm near completion with that. So I'm still working on it. I get feedback from my first responders and other veterans.
So did your military career have anything to do with what you're doing now? Like, I don't know what you did in the military, so but that's, can you explain that to us?
Absolutely. It has everything to do with it. As a 17-year-old kid, I saw trauma just in the barracks. I was, every suicide attempt, every suicide ideation, I was in the middle of it. I didn't ask for it. I just could see the signs very quickly. And, the biggest one that stands out to me is this kid that was just, one of my friends, and he's actually happy. And I noticed that was not his norm. And so I know you can't imagine this, but I grabbed that kid and grabbed him by the shirt, pushed him up against a wall. I couldn't lift him because he's like towered over me, but I was pushing him up against a wall. And I said, "You better tell me exactly what you did." And he took an entire bottle of Motrin, the Army's cure-all. And he said, "Soon it won't hurt me anymore." And he was coming out to get a soda because I guess, you take that many pills, it kind of, it's coming back up. So he did that. And that's when I got the truth out of him. And then I know I'm a narc, but I didn't know what could happen at that time. I just knew that that's probably not a good idea. I'm not medical or anything, but I just had this feeling that he would be in trouble if we didn't do something. So I go to the CQ and I told, "You need to call drill sergeants. We need to get this kid to the hospital, get his stomach pumped, do whatever." And then he gave me stank eye. He just gave me the evilest, dirtiest look ever. And I didn't care because I was doing this for his good. And of course, later I'm like going, "Ooh, should I have done that? Shouldn't I?" Yes, absolutely. I have no regrets about that. And happy to report that the day I PCS'd, or the day I left that particular unit, he did come up to me and he did thank me. I've never kept in touch with him since, but so that's kind of how that started. And then in the Army, I was a counterintelligence agent. And then I did interrogator as well. But my husband doesn't count that because he was a real interrogator. And I just went to the reserve. So he's like, "You're not a real interrogator. You don't have any language or anything." I'm like, "Okay, whatever." And then in the Air Force, I was a personnel officer. So I did squadron section commander for a civil engineer squadron. So I love the firefighters and the EOD and all of the heavy equipment and just all the people, the CAD, all the various flights within the civil engineers. And then I went on to maintenance and did aircraft maintenance squadron. And just being a section commander and seeing all the things that, we deal with on a day-to-day basis, that made me just say, there's got to be a better way. There's got to be more we can do for people that experience trauma and critical incidents. There has to be more. So that's always stayed with me. I've always kind of prayed over that. And so when I run into 22-0, all of a sudden I'm like, "Oh my gosh, here's the answer. Here's the solution." It's pretty exciting. And then after, and also in the Air Force, I did AWACS, not a flyer. I was the education and train the trainer, behind the scenes, syllabi, curriculum, courseware, and just making sure that our people, as they were going through the training, that they could do their job. So got to talk to them on active duty. Hey, did the training help? What's lacking? Let's fix it, you know. So that's pretty much my career, military career.
Definitely. Yeah, and so I mean, doing the personnel stuff and the courseware stuff that helps you in your job now, right? It's not directly related. You're not making courseware, but you're writing the books and you're able to counsel people and be a coach to people using those skills that you learned. And that's what we do with Go Heroes. Is we try to say like, yeah, like I was a firefighter in the Air Force, so of course I thought when I got out, I'm going to be a firefighter when I get out. Well, then didn't work out. So what I did is I translated my skills that I learned in the 911 dispatch, and I did that as a bridge gap. As soon as I got out, of course, it wasn't making what I was in the Air Force. So I did that, and then I luckily got connected to a person in the manufacturing space, and they needed a fire safety technician in the manufacturing center. Went there, did that, which then connected me to another guy who needed a fire safety manager at a university. And I kind of pigeonholed myself in this fire safety thing, but then learned there that I need to branch out. And then that's when we started Go Heroes, because I said I need to get this information to the guys transitioning and the girls transitioning out, because I had 20 days from the day I was, hey, you're getting out of the military, and I was walking out the gate. I had no time for transition, no time for all those programs. But it's just to go back to use what you've learned and pivot it to the civilian world. And so I think that's great. And then I haven't kept up with the suicide rates of the military, because that's not what we focus on at Go Heroes. But I'm glad that we've partnered with you guys for some things that we're working on, and that we can, at least refer people to y'all if we run into that issue. But I didn't live in the dorms very long. I was there maybe 2 years, and because I was a firefighter and I'd be at the fire station every other day. And so I didn't experience those traumas. I saw the drama, not the trauma, but the drama in the dorms. And I can only imagine what some of that caused. I do know some of my firefighter buddies had issues with mental health, as just the stress of 24 on, 24 off, and then not sleeping good. Like you said, or you might run calls your whole shift, and then you have to go home and just pass out, and you sleep for, 12, 13 hours, get up, you got 12 or 13 hours before you're back at the station again. And if you work on a busy flight line, you're going to be going a lot. So I feel you for all those, and I'm glad you're helping with all that. So. All right, so let's close it out with your leadership tip. What's your one leadership tip for someone? Say you're riding an elevator, you got like 1 minute to tell them what they need to do to be that better leader. What would you say?
I'd say know your people, know them, really know them, because they are your team. And I'm real big on just being there. Integrity is real important. Keep your word. If you say you're going to do something, you need to do it. And be there, be available for your people. Very important. And when I say know your people, you need to know, not just what they do, but you need to know what they're capable of. And as a leader, you need to kind of pull it out of them and help them to be the best. I know it's an Army slogan, be the best that they can be, because that's what your job is as a leader. One of your jobs, one of your many things. But yeah, definitely know your people and keep your word.
All right. Well, thanks, Tammy. Thanks for coming on the show today, and we'll get all your links in the bio below, or in the description below, so that people can get a hold of you. And then we'll link to your books and stuff there also. So once again, thanks for coming on.
Thank you.
There are thousands of leadership and management podcasts to choose from. We're glad you chose the Leadership Loading Podcast, a Go Heroes production. If you'd like to support Go Heroes Inc., visit www.goheroes.org. And with that, it's time to wrap up today's show. Thank you so much for listening. We sincerely hope you liked it. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this podcast with your family and friends. Let's all grow together. Thanks for listening to the Leadership Loading Podcast. Leadership inspired.